Joining us now to break down today's event is Boris Epshteyn, a strategic advisor on the 2020 Trump campaign. So, Boris, I noticed today during the press conference and also by a lot of reporting that there's a lot of people conflating lawsuits brought forth by the Trump campaign with lawsuits that aren't directly brought forth by the Trump campaign. They're conflating a lot of different things. So I want to ask you directly, what is the Trump campaign strategy moving forward when it comes to these lawsuits?
Well, Alex, it was good to be with you, and it was wonderful to be at the press conference today. I don't know if you noticed me standing to the side there. I thought I looked pretty handsome, but, you know, I guess I'm only so objective. Listen, here's the deal. The Trump campaign is absolutely focused on counting every legal vote and making sure every illegal vote is not counted. In terms of the lawsuits, of course, the media is going to take any and all lawsuits which are brought by anybody related to Republicans. And if they don't move forward, they're going to assign the negativity to President Trump and the Trump campaign. That's the nature of the mainstream left stream media that we deal with. The reality of it is this. The Trump campaign has been successful in putting forward strong legal arguments around the country. In Nevada, we have the election contest that was described so aptly by Adam Laxalt, Rick Grinnell, Matt Schlapp just a few days ago, which laid out an array of irregularities in that state. People voting who are not registered, who don't actually live in the state of Nevada, dead people on the rolls. You had a Democrat who was elected in Nevada whose election was overturned because of these irregularities in Clark County just a few days ago. Clark County is where Las Vegas is. I myself was in Pennsylvania with Mayor Rudy Giuliani on Tuesday when he argued in our federal case there. And now we've put forward a second amended complaint in that case to broaden our arguments, both equal protection and due process involved in Pennsylvania. Georgia, the recount continues. I think it's almost done, but this campaign is insisting, the president is insisting, that signature matching take place in Georgia. And then Michigan, we actually pulled back a lawsuit today because guess what? We got the remedy we wanted in Wayne County. Wayne County has not been certified because of the gross, really overarching irregularities in Wayne County voting. 71% of voter rolls not matching with the ballots that were put forward. So huge problems in Michigan. And now it looks like Michigan is going to have a problem certifying the state as a whole, because if you don't certify Wayne County, which is where Detroit is, how can you certify the whole state? Wisconsin, the president and this campaign, we put our money where our mouths are. $3 million were sent to Wisconsin for a recount in Milwaukee and Dane County. Dane County is where Madison, Wisconsin is. And we believe that will uncover over 100,000 ballots, absentee ballots, that were cast without being allowed to do so. Because, Alex, this is important. In Wisconsin, mail-in balloting and absentee balloting are not a right. They're a privilege. You have to apply to do so. Well, we believe once this audit is done that about 60,000 absentee mail-in ballots that were cast in Milwaukee were done without being granted the approval to do so, and about 40,000 in Dane. And there are other irregularities that we'll be seeing as well. So that's a quick jaunt across the country and just how strong this campaign has been in pointing out voter irregularities, voter fraud that's been perpetrated on the American people by the Democrats.
And I'm glad you walked us through that, because I have seen a lot of things, for example, where people were saying, well, that's not necessarily voter fraud, while talking about the idea that ballots were coming in after the deadline in Pennsylvania. And I think that all of our viewers need to know that there are multiple challenges being made on multiple fronts. They're not all under the same umbrella or anything like that. What's happening in Pennsylvania, for example, is very different than what's happening in the state of Michigan. And that's something that I noticed today during that press conference. Jenna Ellis very astutely laid out that this isn't the time necessarily for discovery or for showing the evidence. This is about filing the complaint, making your challenge known, and then going through the proper legal process. I mean, you don't necessarily, if you have a murder allegation up there, you don't lay out all the evidence right there and make the decision at the beginning. You go through the proper legal framework in order to get to that point. So when people are asking, where's the evidence? Is that something that they'll see in upcoming complaints? Is it something that there's going to be continued press conference? How will that be delivered to the American people?
Well, a lot of it's already been seen. You've had affidavits in big numbers in Pennsylvania, in Michigan. You've got direct evidence in Nevada. In Georgia, Alex, they're finding thousands of ballots under every rock, it seems like, and they're mostly pro-Trump ballots. So there's already evidence out there. It's just most of the mainstream media that wants the American people to think there is no evidence. There's mounds of evidence, and that evidence, Alex, points to a broad conspiracy by the Democrats to steal this election from President Trump and from the American people. Because guess what? It is not MSNBC, it is not CNN, and it is not Fox News who decide who won this election. The American people decide, and we believe that once every legal vote is counted, it will be determined that President Trump has won re-election.
And I'm glad you brought up Georgia, because we're learning today that the individual overseeing the Floyd County election director was fired because they didn't count those 2,600 votes. That's just one area where I know the Trump campaign was looking in. There was this, and there was another situation as well in a Michigan county as well, where 6,000 votes ended up being the difference between Joe Biden winning that county and President Trump winning that county. So I understand the hardship that you're going through right now, because there's multiple fronts in multiple different states, and there's a lot of evidence to go through. So is there a deadline that you're working on to accomplish this by, or do you want to make sure that it just is thoroughly investigated first?
Well, it's a constitutional process, Alex, and we know what the process is for when the electors have to be appointed. That's December 14th, midnight, December 13th into December 14th. Then they go to Congress and they're counted on January 6th. So we have to put forward our case quickly. And that's why, the media says, well, you had some lawyers come on and some come off. Well, guess what? We're laying out cases here which could take an irregular time from years. Right. But we're doing so in days and weeks because we know what the constitutional timeline is. And we have laid out so much evidence all across the country. And you're right to point out to Michigan and Trump counties where 6,000 votes were miraculously switched from President Trump to Vice President Joe Biden. And then when someone noticed, they were miraculously switched back. But we know that that most likely was done on purpose. And guess what machine was used there? Dominion voting systems. And Sidney Powell did a great job today laying out the history, the troubling history of Dominion. And really, why do we want American vote counting to be done somewhere in Germany, somewhere in Spain, by some machine founded by people who have a relationship with Chavez at the time and Maduro now? That is ludicrous. We need American elections to be decided here in America by Americans.
And, it wasn't too long ago where people like Senator Elizabeth Warren were raising concerns about Dominion. You could look back to the Philippines. There's been international issues when it comes to not only Dominion, but also their subsidiaries that run elections in different parts of the world, too. So I don't think it's anything problematic.
From New York, who, as Mayor Giuliani mentioned, is his Democrat member of Congress. She wrote a letter in 2006, I believe, laying out all the problem with this machine and the company that runs the machine.
Yeah, as we're saying, there's a lot of allegations out there. There's a lot of things that point to the idea that this, at the very least, requires another review. And with that being said, Boris Epshteyn, I really appreciate you coming on, laying out the arguments by the Trump campaign, but also what we should be looking for moving ahead. Thank you.
Alex, great to be with you as always. Have a great night.